So I've talked about nicotine at length on this channel, the neurological benefits, the neuroprotective benefits, the acetylcholine receptor binding benefits, the wakefulness benefits, how sometimes throwing on a 7 milligram nicotine patch kind of feels like modafinil. I mean, you get wakefulness, energy, the drive to work, and some sense motivation just because your brain is working faster. I mean, people get verbal fluency from nicotine patches. The stuff is really pretty awesome, but there's actually a lot of stuff that I haven't talked about what it does. So what I want to do is just do a full breakdown on the nootropic benefits of specifically nicotine patches. Holiday specials are still live for just another couple days. That is 20% off our new courses, Supercharged Dopamine and Nootropics Mastery, the Torque Nootropic Stack, All Day Mental Energy, 25% off for this thing. Code for that is 25TORQUE. And the Cortex Stack, high-level stimulant, focus, and flow nootropic in a bottle. 25% off. Code for that is 25 Cortex. And if you're trying to order like one or two or many products at once, the coupon codes don't necessarily work together. So just email me, Ryan@livecortex.com, so I can give you a custom coupon code to get all the discounts on everything. Say you just want to buy a bottle of Cortex, bottle of Torque, and one of the courses. So let's bring me back. Smadoovi. Nicotine patches. They're honestly pretty awesome. And I have talked about this at length. I've gone as high as the 21 milligram patches. And honestly, it overstimulates me. It makes me feel very funky. I start sweating. So I get side effect from the higher doses of nicotine. 14 milligrams is kind of the same. You know, it's very potent initially and I feel really, really good. But then after it's like 20, 30 minutes, the side effects start kicking in. But the 7 milligram patch is perfect. I can leave it on all day. I have energy for most of the day. I've got good brain function, verbal fluency, and memory. So, first major takeaway, if you're going to try nicotine patches for cognitive performance, start at 7 milligram patches. Do not go to 14 or 21. It's probably going to be overstimulating. You don't want to have side effects. You just want to feel that energy and memory benefit that nicotine patches give you. But let's discuss some of the neurobiological effects of nicotine and how it actually protects your brain from things like Alzheimer's and how it can improve your brain performance acutely as a regularly functional dude that maybe has some mild cognitive impairment. This is a paper that is titled Molecular Insights into the Benefits of Nicotine on Memory and Cognition. It's a review. Now, this is kind of what I meant about there's all kind of mechanisms that people don't typically talk about. The present review focused on the reported benefits of nicotine in the brain and summarizes the associated underlying mechanisms. Nicotine administration can improve cognitive impairment in Alzheimer's disease and dyskinesia and memory impairment in Parkinson's disease. In terms of its mechanism of action, nicotine slows the progression of Parkinson's disease by inhibiting sirtuin 6, a stress-responsive protein deacetylase, thereby decreasing neuronal apoptosis and improving neuron survival. In Alzheimer's disease, nicotine improves cognitive impairment by enhancing protein kinase B, also referred to as AKT, activity and stimulating, this is going to be a hard one, phosphoinositide 3 kinase AKT signaling, which regulates learning and memory processes. They go, nicotine may also activate thyroid receptor signaling pathways to improve memory impairment caused by hypothyroidism. So it's like it's doing other things than just binding to the acetylcholine receptors and activating that kind of cholinergic memory and brain optimization function. Now, here's something you definitely did not know about nicotine, which is kind of why it's like another interesting productivity chemical to be taking. And that is nicotine acting through nicotinic acetylcholine receptors, the NACHRs, increases the firing rate of both orexigenic, agouti-related peptide, and anorexigenic propionmelanocortin neurons in the arcuate nucleus of the hypothalamus. Now, all that really means is that it acts as a appetite suppressant. Those particular neurons, when they get engaged by a compound, they are appetite suppressing. So, I mean, this makes sense. When I throw down a 7 milligram nicotine patch, I'm first of all interested in work because my brain works better, but secondly, I'm really not interested in eating or doing anything other than work. It's great. Now, the nicotinic acetylcholine receptors, which is where nicotine, as you put it on a patch, binds to when it gets into your bloodstream or crosses into the blood-brain barrier, they have a lot of functions relative to cognitive performance. So let's get into a couple several of them. This paper, titled Nicotinic Acetylcholine Receptors from Structure to Brain Function, states that functional studies have revealed that the nicotinic acetylcholine receptors contribute to the control of resting membrane potential, modulation of synaptic transmission, and mediation of fast excitatory transmission. To date, 10 genes have been identified in the human genome coding for the nicotinic acetylcholine receptors, and they've been demonstrated to be involved in cognitive processes such as learning and memory and control of movement in normal subjects. You're also going to find that dosing cholinergics, whether it's Noopept or aniracetam or citicoline or even Alcar, and especially phenylpiracetam, that you have improved physical performance. That is because muscular contractions are highly dependent on your kind of state of acetylcholine. And if you didn't know, you should know that dysfunction of the nicotinic acetylcholine receptors has been linked to a number of human diseases such as schizophrenia, Alzheimer's, and Parkinson's disease. And again, we've got scientific literature backing that nicotine aids in mild cognitive impairment and even significant cognitive impairment in both Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease. Now, one of the things that I figured out through having like endless supply of my own stacks is that nicotine stacks both with Cortex and Torque. If you take 2 capsules of Cortex, 1 7 milligram patch of nicotine, you're going to have very significant brain function for a pretty long time. Same thing applies to Torque. All right, 2 capsules of Torque, 1 7 milligram nicotine patch. I have also found nicotine to stack pretty well with modafinil, assuming that you're not dosing both the nicotine and the modafinil considerably high. Like if you had 70, 75 milligrams modafinil, which is kind of like a medium to regular dose, not a high dose, not a low dose, and then you threw down 7 milligrams nicotine with a patch, I mean, within 30 or 40 minutes, right when the modafinil is effectively at its most elevated state and the nicotine's already in your bloodstream affecting you positively, I mean, if there's stuff that you have to do and get done, there's not going to be much preventing you from executing on work at this point. I mean, it's like very good for brain function. Another potent synergistic combination would be 7 milligrams nicotine and medium dose oxiracetam. Well, this is another cholinergic receptor modifier via optimizing the release of acetylcholine in the brain. You know, it's a classical nootropic that was derived from the most studied nootropic in history, which is piracetam. Same thing with aniracetam. Now, like these iracetams have the additional benefit of not only working on acetylcholine, but they also modify one of the glutamate subtype receptors in a way which fosters long-term potentiation and essentially the strengthening of your synapses, which ultimately makes neurons communicate with each other a lot better and a lot faster in that acute period. Both of these agents, by the way, including all 3 of them, nicotine, oxiracetam, and aniracetam, are neuroprotective, meaning if you give someone a cholinergic antagonist, something that is essentially neurotoxic to the choline system, effectively blocking the receptor sites, like the typical compound used is a compound called scopolamine. In the presence of this cholinergic antagonist, this neurotoxic compound, aniracetam, oxiracetam, and nicotine prevent the memory loss and the memory issues that come from that essentially neurotoxic compound. Now, one question I get pretty often when I talk about nicotine is, is it addictive and do I have to be worried about becoming addicted to it? And I think the answer to that question really depends on your history with nicotine, particularly in smoking or vaping. Like, I mean, if you have in the past, then consuming nicotine again after you've quit for a while, may put you in a place where you want to consume nicotine more. I mean, that's just the breaks, man. I mean, that's just kind of the bottom line. So you got to be aware of that. If you've never consumed nicotine before and you don't have that oral fixation for cigarettes or for having a vape around, I really don't see a case in which nicotine patches for cognitive benefit is going to make you addicted in some way where you're going to start smoking or wanting nicotine like all the time. Lastly, I will give a caveat, and some of you that have studied this have probably heard this. It can be good or bad to stimulate angiogenesis, and nicotine definitely stimulates angiogenesis. That's the growth of new blood vessels. Where it is bad, and this is kind of the drawback or the caveat to examine if you're thinking about using nicotine, is that at concentrations found in the blood of smokers, so that's considerable more nicotine than a 7 milligram nicotine patch, by the way. So that's more than what you would get from a 7 milligram patch. But, whatever, use the study as some sort of reference. Nicotine promoted the growth of new blood vessels or angiogenesis, which is believed to stimulate tumor growth. Okay. So people that, have cancer or have some other tumor, maybe a benign, a hormone gland tumor like a pituitary adenoma or an otherwise tumor, you might want to consider that when in deciding whether or not nicotine makes sense for you. In my personal experience, the Zyn pouches or nicotine gum or nicotine lozenges aren't quite as powerful for that systemic brain function, that really, really powerfully optimized, almost instant cognitive function that lasts a long time and is somewhat comparable, again, to modafinil, Adderall, some of the really, really strong nootropics that we take. And there are not many other compounds that can do that at that level that are just singular compounds. You can stack a lot of things that create that effect, but a single thing that you just put on your arm or you put on your chest or you put on your stomach or whatever that, delivers this agent to your bloodstream over a sustained period of time, there's just not a whole lot that can, in terms of cognitive performance, do that much by itself. Again, remember, start with the 7 milligram patches. If you're going to dose the stuff, don't go to 14 or 21 right away, because then you're going to get side effects and think, I don't respond well to nicotine. You just have to find the dose that makes sense for you. But yes, it's neuroprotective. It's an appetite suppressant. It aids in some degree of cognitive restoration in Alzheimer's and Parkinson's patients. And, maintaining the acetylcholine receptors and keeping them active, considering that those receptors in that system is like the first to go down. It's the major issue in some of these neurodegenerative diseases, is a good idea. As I said at the beginning, and guys, for just a couple more days, we're running these holiday specials, Supercharged Dopamine, Nootropics Mastery. They're 20% off. The code for that is 20 now. Torque Stack, a clean all-day stimulant energy nootropic that activates in 25 minutes and does a whole lot of really cool stuff for brain function. That's 25% off. Code for that is 25 Torque. Cortex, kind of the same thing, but more of a focus and flow element to it. 25% off right now. The code for that is 25 Cortex. Go get some product, boys. Last thing I wanted to say is on consulting, our most popular consulting option has been the targeted email advice consultation. Okay, this is sending me your whole issue, your labs, whatever issues that you're having, whatever thing that you're trying to figure out or things, and having me craft a detailed response back to you on what I would do, advice, strategies, protocols. Targeted email advice consultation. You can get it at livecortex.com. You can book me in under a minute. All right, everybody. It's been an absolute pleasure hanging out with you. Happy New Year. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays. Hope you guys had a safe, fun time with family or whatever the hell you did. I am back in action for content, and it's the new year, baby. So let's fucking go. All right. Later.